Welcome to the post-debate analysis show, the TVJ special. Very, very good to have you. I'm Emily Shields, and back with us for the post-debate analysis, we have Jodian Quarry, attorney at law, broadcast journalist. We have Jermaine Barrett, president of the Jamaican, make sure I get that right, Association for Debating and Empowerment, JADE. We have Granville Knight, social and political commentator. And we will have on electronic platform Dr. Jermaine McAlpin, political scientist. Whoa! Where are we now? Who wants to start first? What do you make of the last hour and a half, Mr. Barrett?
Wow, I'm without words. It was incredible.
Yes.
To see both leaders really going hard to prove their case to the country. I think that every Jamaican who took the time to watch this debate would have been impressed. I've been watching these debates for a number of years now. This is the best one I've witnessed. I saw passion, I saw energy, I saw a desperate attempt to wrestle facts in their favors respectively. I think it was all round an excellent showcase.
Right, Jodian?
I thought it was an impressive showing. It wasn't a team debate, so you didn't have the ability to play off other people, to pass on questions. You had two men who had to explain their positions to the country, explain some of the more problematic parts of their story to the nation, marshal those facts in this conversation, rebut, and go back to tearing apart something that has been said. They both sounded like people who want to lead a country, and they came, both of them, with a level of preparation that, even though we were anticipating it, showcased it was a pleasure.
Right? Tell me your thoughts then.
From Jermaine say him can see. That was a great debate, you know, that was a great debate. But there are some things I really loved about tonight, and I just want to mention these four things. First of all, we talk about, we had mentioned how will they dress, and tonight both men dressed phenomenally well. I must give them comments to that, so that is good. The second thing I really loved about tonight, the journalists were phenomenal. They were on point with the questions, and they did not let them escape. They them feasted and they get to it, then bring back the question in a different way and more pointed and direct. Good. The next thing is that the spirit of debate was really good tonight. As a seasoned debater, I saw debating in action, and I wish all parliamentarians would actually learn how to debate. I'm really glad that now at the national youth level, debating is being considered. Another thing that in terms of what social media was upset about, were the interpreters tonight. And I said interpreters because there were more than one sign language interpreters tonight for the disabled community. And I just want to say kudos to the producers who added that touch to it. But tonight, both gentlemen, phenomenal.
Dr. McAlpin, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Your thoughts on what you saw and heard?
I was certainly very impressed with the composure, the poise. Feathers were barely ruffled. It wasn't a shouting match. We were going to have an argument, a debate concerning the facts and concerning why either of them should lead the country. I am very appreciative of the fact that both of them remained composed and they stuck to their script, sometimes to the fault of not answering the question, but they both stuck to their script, and it was a respectable debate. I would say, if I were to compare it with debates on this side of the pond, certainly that debate was far more respectful in terms of for leadership of a country.
You think feathers were barely ruffled?
Well, the responses didn't result in shouting. There was grandstanding and, of course, pointing. We are Jamaicans. We love point fingers, right?
Yes.
A lot of finger pointing, but I thought it was still composed and respectable.
Let me go over to Jamelia Maitland. She has some responses from our friends on social media. You send your responses to hashtag TVJ Debates 2025, also responses from Facebook. Let's see what we have there, Jamelia. All right, she will come on in just a moment. So let's just go and queue up for those who've missed it. One of the first in the opening, the question from social media on the corrupt practices. That one went to Andrew Holness and his response, and then Mark Golding's rebuttal, bringing in a matter that has been discussed quite heavily, this issue of 28 bank accounts. Let's go to that question and answer.
This instance, the question, you have 90 seconds to answer, and we begin with Dr. Holness. Corruption is a serious problem in our country, and corruption requires strong leadership. From my position as Prime Minister, I have taken action against any member of my political party that has been involved or accused of anything that suggests corruption. In my own case, I have been investigated for a year with an expert forensic auditor. The findings of that report have suggested no corruption. There have been no charges. Every aspect of my report, every aspect of my personal life and my personal financial details are in the public domain. I am the politician about which Jamaica knows the most. And therefore, I am the politician who can stand with the greatest moral authority to treat with any matter that is considered corrupt, as I have done in the past. And I want to give this assurance to the Jamaican people that you know me, you know about me, you can trust me, and you know that I stand against corruption.
Mr. Golding has the opportunity to respond to that social media question as well.
Andrew, what they know about you is that you have 28 bank accounts, that you received several $1 million in cash deposits from anonymous donors in your bank account, that your companies had transactions of over $400 million, several thousand transactions between them, and that positive side, the Prime Minister. So the whole question that has been asked is an excellent question. And we really need to step up our vigilance against corrupt behavior, nepotism and cronyism. The volume of scandals under this Jamaica Labour Party government is unprecedented. Over the number of ministers who have had to be removed from frontline duty, many of them parked in the naughty corner in OPM rather than being sacked. It is a disgrace to the country, and your personal situation where you're operating under a deep cloud because your Integrity Commission declarations are not certified also is something which Jamaica cannot go forward with.
That was part of the first salvo. Tell me about that particular moment, Jermaine Barrett, the commencement of the rebuttal by Mark Golding.
So I think Mark Golding raises some very, very important concerns having to do with the Prime Minister. There is a deadlock. Yes, Jamaicans are being pulled to and fro. I think what would help us to resolve the deadlock, for example, is if the Integrity Commission would come out and reveal the independent audit report that they would have gotten, that the Prime Minister alleges sort of revealed that there's nothing to see here.
In the face of the court challenge, remember, there's a court case going on, you know, and it has been disclosed.
Right. But I'm still curious to understand why was that not revealed to begin with. It's taxpayers' money that paid for it. The people of Jamaica have an obligation, a responsibility rather, to see the full evidence. And so I'm troubled by the fact that this matter has been allowed to extend as long as it has. People are just sick and tired of the allegations and counter allegations. I think it needs to be settled quickly.
Yes, Jodianne, on that point.
I thought that it was two people who were giving half an answer to that social media question. The question was about low voter turnout, people refusing to vote because they believe that both parties are corrupt. You answer half the question. So they've both zoomed in and focused on the corruption point with as we had spoken about earlier, Mark Golding using this as an opportunity to hammer in now some of the stories that have made their way around, seeking to harm Andrew Holness in this debate. He later on comes back in the debate and speaks about those 28 bank accounts. But the presence in that moment of Mark Golding speaking about them certainly then doesn't allow for Andrew Holness, because he's the person that went first, to go back and immediately rebut, which leaves for many people Mark Golding having left something on the table for persons to go, the parked in the naughty corner comment with persons not being removed from government, but instead put in the office of the Prime Minister is a serious thing the Prime Minister hadn't responded to and hadn't moved back on. And we saw then an opposition leader being able to throw bombshells and not have any response back in ways that damage the Prime Minister.
But in terms of the naughty corner, is that actually true? Are there ministers parked there without?
So the idea is it is not fact. It is the appearance of fact enough to damage your opponent.
Unanswered.
And so because the Prime Minister does not at any point in time in this debate touch that, but he does go back to the 28 bank accounts, he leaves something on the table then unanswered.
Yes. Let me hear your thoughts on this, Granville.
Yeah, and I think looking at the entire debate, this is for me was one of the deciding questions that will help to determine who the winner of the debate will be, because there are so many unanswered questions here. Especially when it comes down to the point of rebuttal. Rebuttals are very important. Let me just say this. In terms of throat, in terms of structure and delivery and tone, they were evenly matched. So for me, the debate came down to the content and the rebuttals, right? And in this matter, the outgoing Prime Minister, Holness, he failed to rebut most of the accusations brought on by his opposition. He addressed the 20 bank accounts, good.
Later on.
Yes, later on. But he did not address the $400 million in donation. He did not address the other things that were brought up. And in a debate, you can't allow issues like those to be unresolved. You're literally giving your opponent the points and say, all right, that is wrong, but that may be true.
Right. Dr. McAlpin.
It's not a debate driven by a moot. So let us be clear. It's driven by the questions asked. And of the 18 questions, the leader of the opposition brings in corruption in about 10 of his responses. So the hammering home of corruption, I think at this point in the cycle, is not going to be of that significant consequence. I wanted him to talk about his vision for Jamaica, and the hammering almost to make himself saint-like on the perspective of corruption, because he also didn't answer quite a few of the allegations concerning bank accounts or assets that he holds. And I think both of them waffled because the matter of corruption is a problem on both sides.
Right.
Certainly the JLP is on the back foot, so they have to respond more. But I think in many ways, the deciding factor both for the debate and both for the elections is not going to be the question of corruption or non-corruption.
Well,
it's a question of who persons feel can run the country better.
But this is the first segment of the debate, though, Dr. McAlpin, and a social media question came about corrupt parties. This is a social media question.
Yes.
And in fact, how the Prime Minister interpreted it, that it's not only about his administration, but what he did was to skillfully put himself to say, in my own case, because he knows that there are questions about corruption over him. So how can you make the point that it is perhaps not a big issue when it is a big question in the first segment of the debate, and he spoke of his administration and interposed himself in the answer when he came back? I think Granville wants to take that, and then I'll come back to you.
No, but the question was directed to me.
All right, sorry, go right ahead. Sorry, go right ahead. You'll come after.
Yes, so certainly I think it is important. I'm saying that is not the basis on which the election will be decided. I think we have elevated corruption to being far more consequential when, as a society, we have been permissive with corruption. And in most instances, we like to talk about unilateral corruption, about corrupt politicians, but in many ways, we are not assessing that even when we talk about the transparent international rankings, it's a perception of corruption. And so I think we are far overplaying this item of corruption. That's my perspective.
Let me hear Granville Knight.
Okay, so I'm not saying that corruption is the issue or the determining factor in this debate. I'm saying that this question that was asked was a deciding factor in this debate. And let me explain. When asked a question as to pretty much why there's no vote, yes, they did not address the voting question, but Sir Holness made a lot of I statements. I have it here, a lot of I statements. While in Mark's response and answering the question, he said, one, we have made legislation, we have signed code of conduct which the opposition have not signed. So it's we have an intent to publicize our commission reports in the future. So what we're looking for the answer for this debate question is, what are the policy proposals? What will make people want to vote? And that is why I said that this, for me, was one of those questions in this debate, not a matter of corruption, do not twist my words, is a determining factor in this debate tonight, not the election.
Let me take a break. Stay with us. It's the post-debate analysis. More to come. Well, it's the TVJ's post-debate analysis of the leadership debate. I'm Emily Shields. I go over to Jamaica Maitland, who has some responses from the representatives, the individuals on social media. Jamaica, tell me what you have.
Thank you so much, Emily. So we have been asking our friends on Facebook, Instagram, and X their reactions from tonight's leadership debate, and we are going to be showing some of those feedback responses now. So we have Rosemary Croft. She says, I want to know, based on Mr. Golding's tax reform, where will the country get the money to carry out all the plans he has proposed? He's not as transparent. Some other tax is behind this. Well, we're going to continue. Tani says, in my opinion, nobody won. It was a very distasteful tracing match and blame game. No proper policy or plan put on the table. Can we take a couple more? Whipping out the birth certificate was a good response from Golding. We saw that coming up a lot in the chat. The questions were good tonight, but who is fact-checking the responses? Now, from all three debates, we saw this response coming up consistently. And I know fact-checking is something that, as much as we want to do it on the night of the event, it's just time, and we do it from time to time after these leadership races happen. So in primetime news, and I know in our subsequent news reports, we're going to be sharing and we're going to be checking, verifying what the leaders and even the debaters from previous debates, what they have been saying and how truthful and accurate it is.
Thank you so much, Damelia. All right, on that matter of the old birth certificate, let us cue up that. It came from a question concerning fixed date for election. It then ended with a question from Mr. Holness, are you truly a Jamaican? And then a move on. And then in a response from Mr. Golding, the pulling out of this thing from the breast pocket. Let's cue that up.
First of all, I think the Prime Minister repeated innuendo or direct attack which has been leveled by his party on my nationality. And, you know, I just wanted to just make it absolutely clear that I am indeed born here as a Jamaican. Here is my birth certificate, and it shows I was born at the University Hospital on July 19th, 1965, and it's right here. I hope your camera can pick it up. And I have a copy for you, Prime Minister, right here. And I wish you could provide me with a copy of your certification, but of course you can't do so. Now, on the question of tax, it is there's a third schedule to the GCT Act now, which has a long list of items which are not subject to GCT that are exempt. We feel that laptops and other devices are critical tools of trade, and it is wrong to tax them, and we are going to add them to that list. And similarly, sports equipment, which is vital for social cohesion. Sports is a critical part of keeping young people away from straying down the wrong path and so on. Why are we taxing those items? That cost of living is already high. So I don't agree. The system we have already caters for items which should not be taxed. And we're simply saying we want to adjust those items to include things that should be there but are not yet there.
Dr. Holness?
The Jamaica Labour Party is the only political organization to have reduced taxes. We reduced the GCT from 16.5% to 15%. And we have done so in a way that has not compromised our revenues or the sustainability of future programs. All, and I repeat, all the tax suggestions and promises of the opposition will compromise our fiscal arrangements and place us back in debt or result in increased taxes. The best way to provide social services is to identify the persons who need it.
Thank you, Dr. Holness. Our next question is...
Right, so on the night of the 28th of August 2025, that birth certificate moment. Jermaine Barrett, did you see it? What did you make?
I did in my mind's
What
eye.
did you make of it?
Listen, I think that the both camps, both factions of the political parties are locked in terms of whether or not they believe it's a big issue, is an issue that benefits them or is against the opposing team. I think this debate and this issue ought to be viewed from the vantage point of the impact that it's had on the undecided voter. I don't think that the response here sways anybody really. I don't think that there's any Jamaican out there really who believe that Mark Golding is not a Jamaican. And it is quite frankly an accident of birth that gave him British citizenship. You know, there's a conversation about when he went and actively went for his Jamaican passport and so forth. But I think the Prime Minister was wrong in declaring that, you know, to be a Jamaican means this, and, you know, it sort of obliges you, it seemed to me, to getting a Jamaican passport. I don't think that those issues are at all relevant. So my assessment is this does not in any way help us to arrive at a decision as to which party to support, quite frankly.
I disagree.
No, okay, good. I love
This is political theater.
Yes,
Mark Golding has not answered definitively the question of his Jamaican citizenship in a way that we have seen, except tonight, pulling out a document out of his breast pocket of his three-piece suit to show that he is a Jamaican citizen and was born at University Hospital. This is a clinching moment because this question of whether or not he's Jamaican now gets put to rest definitively. It is also theater and drama in that he's speaking to his base. He's speaking to the people who now see him as their leader, saying, that's my leader. That will be going viral in communities that support him, and that also will then deal with and dismiss this question of whether or not he's Jamaican.
But
later
they're already
on,
convinced.
But,
they're already convinced.
Perhaps, but later on, Prime Minister Holness does say something in another question that says it is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. Right.
Let's take that, and then I'll come back to Granville Knight and to Dr. McAlpin, because I asked you all before the debate whether this should be a question. It had to be a question because it goes to credibility and perhaps authenticity. Yeah, it has come up. It came up in an interesting way, and the response has also been quite unique. Let's go to the follow-up question from Giovanni, which spoke to the days to confirm and weeks to renounce the British citizenship, and the response that Jodian spoke about.
I didn't hesitate to acknowledge dual citizenship. I was born in Jamaica. I had a British father, and I inherited British citizenship by descent from him. And that's lawful under the laws of Jamaica, and indeed parliamentarians in Jamaica are permitted to be dual nationals. I therefore didn't consider it to be something which was problematic. However, when it was raised last year and politicized, I decided I want to know what the Jamaican people felt about it, because I thought really my response ought to be driven by them. We did an internal poll. It showed that a majority thought I should renounce, and so I did. And I renounced my British citizenship in August last year.
Dr. Holness, rebuttal.
You know, this is a strange one. A man who wants to represent his country must choose his country. He doesn't need to ask anyone. You should choose. And that's why we say we choose Jamaica. It is indeed of concern that it was not until your 40s, when you were becoming a minister of government, that you sought to have a Jamaican passport. It is not your birth that makes you Jamaican. It is the choices you make for your country, including supporting a process that would make a Jamaican head of state here, including getting a Jamaican passport.
Part of the debate that went on a moment ago. Granville Knight, that moment, the moment from the pullout of the small paper, the birth certificate. Did you have one of those birth certificates?
The age paper.
The age paper.
I mean, are you saying my age is showing?
No.
But I think that was brilliant.
Yes.
Because, I mean, Jermaine couldn't see, so I said, like, Jermaine, he pulled out his birth paper. And not one of the current ones from the RGD, but one of the older ones. I said, no, it's one of the older ones.
Yeah.
And for me, that was such a great comedic relief.
Yes.
We did not see that level of comedic relief, not even in the team's debate on the economy. And we did not anticipate it here. So for me, as a Jamaican, not necessarily as a debater, as a Jamaican, I love that antics.
Yes.
And I found that to be so cool. But what he also did, because we're missing the point that he made, he's saying that I can certify that I am Jamaican, but can you show me that you are certified in it based upon your position? And that is the matter. And you know, we may be saying that it doesn't matter, or it's probably distasteful that he pulled it out. But what if, and we ask the question, what if Mr. Holness had pulled out his certification tonight in like manner?
He can't do it.
But no, I'm just saying.
Because we know he's not certified.
All right, but what if he had done? We would have said that, oh, see there? So now we're realizing that, you know, people are just being partisan where that is concerned. But there is an issue that I took, which I believe was one of the weakest rebuttal in this debate. The question is, you're not Jamaican by birth. And I didn't hear this question in sense of Mark Golding. Ask me, so if I'm not Jamaican by birth, then what am I? And I think that was a very weak question.
No. What I understand him to be saying, Mr. Golding said, I got my citizenship by descent from a British father. When the matter was raised last year concerning my citizenship, I felt I needed to hear what the Jamaican people had to say, so I consulted.
And I had a problem with that response.
No, hold on. So before you have the problem. So this is why Mr. Holness is saying, you don't consult when you want to lead. You should make a personal decision to choose Jamaica. That's what I heard him say. So it's not, he's saying, whether you're born here or not, and you can flip out the birth certificate. When the time came for you, Mark Golding, to decide, you threw it out to the people to consult without choosing. Now, you can say what you make of that, but that's how I understand the Choose Jamaica thing to have come in. And that's going to come to you, Jody.
Yeah, man, I get that, you know, but once again, the question was asked. And you have to remember, you know, we are looking, as Jody said earlier, we are looking for sound bites.
Yes.
And if that becomes a soundbite tomorrow, you're not Jamaican by birth. And instantly the question asks, what are people in the diaspora thinking? That kind of situation. What choices did you make? You chose to leave.
Yes.
Which means although you're born here, so those are some questions that are coming out from this.
Yes. We'll come back to other thought. Yes, let me hear you, Julie, because you disagreed with him saying that.
I disagreed. It's not your birth that makes you Jamaican. I thought that placing it on the table like that did a disservice to what he was saying. So I didn't understand it the way that you did, which was that Mark Golding didn't choose Jamaicanness, but rather that it is not your birth that makes you Jamaican is something now that goes to the heart of Jamaicanness. With a constitution that says you can be born here, you can be by virtue of second and third if you apply for Jamaican citizenship, be Jamaican. For somebody who is born in a hospital, now pulled out the document and said so. What more is your question on Mark Golding on this? And I thought it didn't work very well. I thought Mark Golding's response, though, on this, that he had to poll to see people's reaction and response to his Jamaicanness was also an issue. So I did not see them connected as responses. I saw them as two problematic responses, and I gave them both weak marks for that.
No, all right, let me hear you, Dr. McAlpin, before we go to the break. Dr. McAlpin, can you hear us on the birth certificate moment and the...
Yes, I can. I thought it was a nice masterstroke for the leader of the opposition to pull out his birth certificate. But like Jody, I feel like the question of the birth certificate and the right to lead, for me, it's indicative of another issue, and that is the choice, right? When he said he did an internal poll, I was very uncomfortable with that. Why you'd need to do a poll to determine whether or not you should get a Jamaican passport. I found that to be problematic because it is almost as if you wanted now to consult the people, though it was internally said, didn't say to the party or to his family. He said he did an internal poll, and the majority said he should renounce his citizenship. So I found that problematic.
All right, let us go to a break. When we come back, more. Thank you, viewers. We're back with you in the TVJ special. It's a post-debate analysis, and we had a heated discussion during the break about this particular matter and some of the sentiments. Perhaps we should share with the viewers some of the issues that we were debating about this very birth certificate moment, and how is it that we read or didn't read, because it's fascinating to me that the way I said I interpret the Choose Jamaica, none of you on the panel saw it that way. And there are some people who are taking an issue with the Prime Minister saying your birth certificate alone when you're born here doesn't make you Jamaican. Go back to that again, Jody, and tell me some of the responses you were getting from social media to their understanding of that question.
Watching people respond and react to that, they understood it. The comment made by the Prime Minister, it's not your birth that makes you Jamaican, they sat back and said, what do you mean? Because one, constitutionally, that's not accurate. So that is, the Constitution says if you're born here, you're Jamaican. But we also allow for people at various degrees of Jamaicanness to be Jamaican. But two, the idea that Mark Golding, remember, this is after he whips out the document out of his pocket and says, I'm a Jamaican, I was born here, that he's asking him to choose Jamaica after Mark Golding in his response said he has to do a poll. He has to go out and find out what people are thinking about whether he should renounce his UK citizenship. I think what the Prime Minister does is not address this idea of him having to do polling and finding out the way the winds blow before he renounces, but instead when the Prime Minister appears to make a bold statement that says that Jamaicanness is not just being born Jamaican, but doing more, he adds on more in a way that I thought was a little further than he might have wanted to go.
Okay. Jermaine, you have a thought on that?
Yes, I think that I'm not a defender of either gentleman. I think, though, that one has to be charitable to the Prime Minister. Responding under pressure, he misspoke. Because we've not seen any evidence at all that there's an attempt to change what being Jamaican means, right? And so I think what the Prime Minister is really saying is that to demonstrate, to attain, to strive for leadership at the highest level of the country, you must be so committed to the country of Jamaica that you would have given up another citizenship.
Without
that's
consulting.
What he's telling you. Without consulting. I think that's what he meant.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, though, that misspeak on his part will be misconstrued in many domains as meaning that, well, you're questioning my nationality that is granted to me constitutionally.
Let me ask you something. This particular birth paper, I don't think I've seen anyone like this in.
We had the birther moment in the United States, recall that.
Right, but you didn't get to see that birth paper, Mr. Barry.
No, I did not.
It's a very old one.
Yes.
Is there an issue concerning whether does the old one demonstrate authenticity, or should the newer one be the one that is used, especially if a Jamaican passport was had and you can't have it on the old one? Does that even matter? Let me hear you.
There's something interesting about that. Remember, you get to keep the old one as well as the new one. I'm sure he has a new one somewhere. Of course, he's a top minister in the country. But that was also a very strategical political move. Because the older base will say, wait, him have an old birth certificate, me supposed to have one too. So there's that part of our history where that is. I used to have that back in high school. What I used to tell but that's a difference. But that's my first birth certificate. So I was really surprised to see that. For me, it was, oh, my birth certificate. But no, I wanted all one. Yes. And that was just a really good Jamaican moment.
Yes, Jordan.
Authenticity. It's just a marker of, they wrote on it at UE, at UC at the time it would have been, they wrote on it, this is the paper, and not only that, for all the thinking that we can do after the fact, in the moment when he went into his pocket and pulled it out, it was set game match. So there is a bit of theater that comes out of that is not replicated by a nice, shiny, RGD glossy piece of document.
Right, and then the timing of that response as well, which it goes back to the rebuttal, because Dr. McAlpin, this birth certificate moment, it didn't even come with a question concerning nationality. It came really
tax break for small businesses and
a question for tax break.
Yes.
But it tell me about the flow of it in light of the response to the Prime Minister in the question before when he asked, are you truly Jamaican, and how Mark Golding made use of this other question on small business in the rebuttal to deal with that issue right there. What did you think of that?
Yeah, so they've been using other responses to answer previous questions. But when he pulled out that birth paper, as they'd call it, I thought that put everything to rest, right? Especially because it was the old one. It means that he's an older Jamaican. It's not a new birth certificate that he would have somehow acquired his Jamaicanness sometime recently. So I thought that was very strategic, and it was well played, it was well delivered, and if there was a drum roll, that would have been the drum roll moment. But I think the larger question is the reality that he appears to be more trustworthy having that passport. Having that birth paper than the newer one. In my perspective, I felt like he would come across to those older Jamaicans as being a man of the people.
Right.
If I may quickly.
Yes,
I think that this bit of the response must also be connected to the response about members of the disabilities community and where, what it is that the administration, either political party, would do for that. And I really think that Mark Golding was very strong in terms of pointing to his lineage, his father's contribution. So a lot of persons who are now somehow annoyed because Mark Golding's father is British and Mark Golding became British therefrom, have now to reflect on the fact that this British father of Mark Golding has done a tremendous amount of good to the country at large. I think that was a powerful connection when between the two.
Yes, yes. We'll pick up on that particular clip in a moment. He really did use the chance to humanize himself, to point to his immediate lineage.
And to redeem his lineage.
Right, and to say we have worked with people with disability. So when you ask about whether we're going to have jobs farmed out for people with disability, that's the family from which I come. You remember that moment, Jody?
I do remember that moment. The question, though, and one that they had to go back to was public sector jobs for people with disabilities, if you're willing to reserve jobs. He does a great job in the details of going through his father's work and going through the UN Convention on Disabilities, talking about the Disabilities Act, talking about his background as part of that.
Yes.
The answer to the question, though, is one that Dion had to go back to. Getting public sector jobs for people with disabilities. Both he and the Prime Minister spoke about allowing for persons with disabilities to get on the PATH program. Well, not him and the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister spoke about persons getting on the PATH program. He spoke about his lineage and the background. The getting the jobs for people in the public sector part, though, is what everybody had skipped and Dion had to go back to.
Yes.
And so I thought it was an amazing way to pull in what he needed to, but there were quite a number of instances where they weren't answering the questions they got. They answered the questions they thought benefited them.
Right, but in that moment, I think his familial connection was such an important one.
And humanizing.
And humanizing, that it was great to have deviated from the actual question and to make people forget the question and to focus on him, what his father did, what he will therefore do, and force the questioner, in this case Dion, to actually come back to the actual question, because you took a moment. Look how it resonates with you, Jermaine. You take a moment to say,
as a member of the disability.
Yes, hang on a minute. This man is asked about disabilities.
Yes.
And he's telling us, having showed us the birth certificate, he's telling us now that my father worked here, specifically with the disabled. And there's actually a center established for him.
Even though you consider him a British citizen.
Yes, yes. So that was a...
I did not see that link initially until we are now looking at all the facts played out.
You didn't see that?
No, as it relates to just verifying that.
Yeah.
Because it will now answer the question, in terms of, it's not your birth that makes you Jamaican. What can be known, what he can now say is that if my father building one of the only disability centers in this country for the Jamaican disabled community, how more Jamaican can my lineage be?
Yeah, it's a question about commitment to country.
Yes.
And he's demonstrating here that his father was committed to the country, he's committed to the country, and so by mere accident of birth, which was considered nationality by birth to me, there's no issue there.
No, I agree. But just for point of being absolutely factual, I think the issue with the Choose Jamaica that Andrew Holness came with is when he said, when the matter was raised last year, I need to know how the Jamaican people felt. And so I consulted and had to renounce, just as a point of fact. But I take all of the other points. There was a question on constitutional reform. Let us remind ourselves what that was and the responses that came following that question. Yes. Let's go to the one on constitutional reform. Let's queue up.
As a nation in reducing our public debt, we ensured that the fiscal rules were very strong. with an algorithm, an equation in the fifth schedule to the Financial Administration Audit Act that determines the fiscal balance that must be hit by each year's budget, and that has ensured that successive governments have stayed on course to take it down to 60%. We can do constitutional reform, but it requires authentic consultation with the people, and there must be an effort to have bipartisan consensus on critical issues. And we have not been able to achieve that consensus yet on the critical issue of decolonization, in particular our final court, which is now the Privy Council, the King's Court, that makes orders in the name of the King, as opposed to the regional court, which has been established, the Caribbean Court of Justice, which Jamaica helped to design, helped to fund, and which has developed over the last 20 years a reputation for independence and excellence. There are aspects of the bills that are in Parliament now that we have big problems with. In particular, the fact that effectively it will allow the Prime Minister to appoint the President, because a simple majority of both houses will do it if we do not agree who that person is. I think that is wrong. I think that the President of the country must command the trust and confidence of both sides of the political aisle, and indeed the wider public.
Dr. Holness?
To be clear, the bills before Parliament do not give the Prime Minister the ability to appoint the President. We are the party that have advanced the greatest, the process of repatriating our sovereignty. I am a Jamaican through and through, and I want to see my country's sovereignty represented.
Part of the debate into matters concerning constitutional reform. Any biggie jumped out at you from that particular discourse there, Jermaine?
Yes, I think the Prime Minister was not being precise and accurate in his response when he says that the bills before Parliament do not give him as the Prime Minister a kind of a veto power on the appointment of the President. It does. It may not do so explicitly, but a Prime Minister who commands the largest party in Parliament, we know how our version of Westminster politics works. People fall in line with the party. People fall in line with the Prime Minister's dictates. So it gives the Prime Minister an oversized sort of influence over the process, at least that. I think as well, though, that the matter...
This is under the new constitutional reform bill?
Yes. Based on
if there's a deadlock, if they can't decide.
Yes, precisely.
Yes. Yes, go ahead. Based on the...
Right. I'll leave my comments there for now.
Right. Jodianne, you have a thought on
So
that?
this was a follow-up to the follow-up to the follow-up question, because it starts off with Mark Golding talking about a 62%. That 62% is because the Prime Minister challenges him, saying that the debt to GDP ratio this year will be 60%. Prime Minister Holness says, nope, it's supposed to be about 65%. Mark Golding starts off then in the question now about fixed election dates and constitutional reform by first going back to answering the 62%, saying, nope, it has been reworked to 62%. So you're seeing this back and forth of them pulling answers to different questions along as they answer new questions. But this discussion about constitutional reform, fixed election dates, repatriation of sovereignty, these are three questions in a row that are asked that are all about where we are. So the question of fixed election dates and the tinkering with the Constitution that the Prime Minister speaks of is something then that Mark Golding responds to, saying you are tinkering when you're moving parts around with regard to the DPP, for example. The Prime Minister, though, very strongly says that he wants to see his country's sovereignty, and then he says, and it's being frustrated by this guy on the other side, talking then constantly about the things we could get if only Mark Golding and his side would get out of the way. And so I think that was a powerful set of points that he was able to set up there as he was talking about this. But this discussion about the way that we go forward is going to constantly be a political ball because both sides are unable to agree.
Right. And I think we heard for the first time from the Prime Minister that he prefers a local court.
Right. And that's the comment I was going to head to.
Yes, but that he wants a consultation on such a big issue. Tell me why it jumped out at you.
It jumped out at me because there has been a war being waged about this Privy Council matter. The opposition leader has sought hard to press the Prime Minister to declare what his administration's position is. We heard it tonight. I think, though, that there's a broad principle and philosophical divide between the two parties. The Prime Minister's stance is, well, I have a personal view, my administration may very well be locked into that view, but it's not for us or the opposition for that matter, to decide for the Jamaican people which court is the apex court for the country. And I think it also feeds into a narrative and gives fodder to the government, where the government can now say, well, the opposition is being dictatorial and undemocratic in declaring that the Jamaican people ought not to have a say, that it ought to be a matter for the parliament to decide. And the response from the opposition leader to say, well, constitutionally we're not required to have a referendum on this matter is besides the point. It is not illegal either for the Prime Minister, or for this matter rather, to be brought to the people of Jamaica. So the fact that the Constitution doesn't make it illegal doesn't make it illegal for it to be done that way.
Right. Your thoughts, Granville?
But then again, remember, he said that by conventional practice for other nations, the government just made a decision. They did not put it to a referendum. And so if this is so important, if this is something that you're so passionate about, and you believe that it's in the best interest of the country, and there's no law preventing you from acting on this, why? We have elected you as the Prime Minister. We trust you. Since you have the leadership power, we're going back to, remember the same thing we were talking about when Mark said that he was going to put the issue to the people. We said that it questioned his leadership ability. Why are you going to put an issue that can be easily rectified within the Parliament back to the people?
Because we're at a point where we must have a referendum on the matter of the Republic, right?
Yeah,
so why not add that to it as well? And can't the Prime Minister have a personal view, but chooses not to use his authority as Prime Minister to force it upon the people? I think that's absolutely reasonable.
Yeah, no.
And to say finally, that no other country has done it this way does not mean, in my mind, that Jamaica can't be the first to do it this way and to be successful.
Jody, and you're saying no, then Dr. McAlpin.
You're the lawyer. Please explain.
It's not just the lawyer in me, it's also a journalist in me, because when I had raised this to Dr. Lloyd Barnett, who's a constitutional scholar, but also a member of the Constitutional Reform Committee, on this proposition that Jamaica have its own final court of appeal, his words were, no serious person considers that to be an alternative. To hear the Prime Minister tonight in a conversation now,
No serious person considered what?
that to be an alternative.
What?
Jamaica having its own final court of appeal, that as a setting up its own final court. That this is a discussion between the Privy Council and the Caribbean Court of Justice and setting up Jamaica. So I had asked him that question in particular.
Why not?
That's
Did he
not
explain
correct.
No, I'm telling you his response
but that's
to me.
not correct, because
No, but
from
his
Gold-
response
I
to me
understand, but from
was this.
Golding was Prime Minister, he said we need to
Good,
consider whether
having a
I
final
guess
court
we
here,
are
and this
serious.
conversation about it is one that I have repeatedly raised.
Yes.
Do we have this third option of this final court? The Prime Minister puts on the table he wants a local court, respects the CCJ, but thinks that we should have a local court. The Judicial Committee of the Privy Council, though, is still in place. We are now having a conversation that brings in a whole third about a whole way of how much money is it going to cost, what does it look to set up, everything. I think it expands the conversation. It's a definitive answer for the first time that we have received tonight, and I think that it is useful going forward, but it is one that I did not expect to hear.
All right. We have about a few minutes to go. Let's, Dr. McAlpin, you had anything else to say on this? There are a lot of other clips, but over the course of the next couple days.
Yes, I was trying to say that a referendum is can be consultative or binding. And so if we're going to talk about consulting the people, that's one of the mechanisms used by many democracies across the world.
Yes.
So I certainly think that it could have been used and should be used as an instrument if we really want to say we want to gauge what the people want. A referendum could be done. It's not binding, can be consultative, but I think certainly that's a path that should be taken.
Right. All right. We have about 4 minutes to go. Your thoughts, Mr. Barrett. Who emerged head and shoulder or head or whatever from this debate?
I know I'm going to get a lot of hate from one side in relation to my answer, but I stand brave and bold in declaring that the Jamaica Labour Party, Andrew Holness, the leader thereof, won this debate decisively.
Yes. Granville?
I'm going to be it's on the contrary. I would say Mark won this debate, and let me tell you why. In the latter half of the debate, they were evenly matched. Mr. Holness came out a little bit slow out of the blocks, and that's why I said for me, the debate was decided from early on. I'm glad that he came on head-to-head at the end, but this debate was decided from the initial questions asked, and so I'm going to give this debate to Mark Golding.
Dr. McAlpin?
Yes, using the scorecard, I would say that the rebuttal certainly placed the Prime Minister over the line, so I give the leadership debate to the Prime Minister. I scored them at 31 and 32.5.
Jody?
It's so interesting to have a mixed panel here, because I thought, looking at some of the structure of the arguments with some of the details that were given by both sides, looking at who answered and who didn't answer questions, use of time as they were going through the questions, and the rebuttals as well. What is it that you were to take away from this debate? I thought in my scoring that I would give Mark Golding the edge, given what it is that he was able to indicate, but also that the Prime Minister in some points was incredibly strong, but in others was not as commanding, and part of that might just be the exhaustion factor that we spoke about earlier.
Well, on this, the 28th of August at 11:28, with this leadership debate, in my view, it was a very strong showing from both gentlemen. At the end of the day, I really preferred Mark Golding's presentations. And part of the reason I preferred his presentations, the ability to rebut and to recalibrate in a timely manner, and to put some crucial issues on the table that got Mr. Holness a bit flustered some points in time. He did contain himself, to his credit. I think the edge in this debate came with Mark Golding's ability to rebut, and rebut he did. I think the Prime Minister absolutely sold his record in terms of what he's been able to do for the people of Jamaica. So there's no knockout in this debate. But I did expect Mark Golding to come, having watched him through the Parliament, and I think he did exceptionally well in rebutting on some very crucial points. So for me, I definitely give the edge tonight to the leader of the opposition, Mark Golding. Catch us next week, when we will come to you for the counting of the numbers on election night on the 3rd September 2025. Thank you to my panelists, and have yourself